play takes place in South Philly. Tell us a little bit about your play that you're writing.
All right. Well, my play is called Echoes from Positano. The entire play takes place in a single day during the lives of five men who have just within the last week are trying to deal with the effects of the Great Depression. And everyone is trying to figure out essentially what the next step is in their lives and how this affects what they want to do with their lives because, the whole economic world has essentially just ended.
What inspired you to write that?
The original idea for this play came from a workshop that we had at the Barnes Foundation. And during that workshop, the question posed to the five students was, think of something that would be impossible to stage, and then stage it. And the thing that I thought of at that point was, what would happen if you had a full boxing ring on set, and the actors actually fought for real? And depending on the outcome of said match, the actual play would be different in each showing. And that's what I'm working with right now, that same kind of idea. I'm not sure how far it will be able to be implemented, but that's essentially the genesis of the project.
Why a boxing ring in South Philly in 1929?
My family is very big on history, and a lot of this comes from my grandfather, actually. One of the things that I learned from him was that Philadelphia had a massive amateur boxing circuit during the Depression. And there were a lot of people who would have between 200 and 300 amateur fights, which were just, fights in little gyms upstairs above auto body shops and, other kinds of businesses like that, without ever turning pro because there wasn't enough money in it. But at the same time, it was enough money to, if you did well, feed your family. And that was really what mattered at that point, since there was no manufacturing left in the city.
How did you discover theater?
To be completely honest, I was put in a class in my high school. I went to Creative and Performing Arts, as you know. And while I was there, one of the classes that you take in your sophomore year for the creative writing program is playwriting. And up to that point, I did not like writing dialogue. Most of my writing consisted of fiction that was narrator driven with very little in the way of dialogue at all. In the first week, I was told to submit a inanimate object monologue, actually, to the Young Voices Monologue Festival. And, well, as I'm sure you remember, it went pretty well. I actually was one of the winners of that contest. I think that was 2011, yeah. And, yeah, just from there, it sort of kept going. The love of theater grew with the realization that as a young person, you can actually get your works seen by the public, which is incredible.
What was the name of that piece?
Pushing the Wrong Button.
What was that about?
A remote control who was, as many consumer electronics are, abused.
How did you discover writing as something that you love to do?
My cousin, went to Tampa for the same thing that I did. She was in their creative writing program about 7 years before me. And that was something that, I would hear about her high school when I was in elementary. And, it just sounded so amazing from the things that she would tell us about it. It's such an odd thing to be able to say that you go into your high school and during the day, instead of, learning about various things in English class, you're actually creating the world instead of just reading about it. And because of that, I really wanted to go there, and that sort of spurred me on for writing. And writing has kind of been in my family for a long time. My grandmother was a songwriter for the Philadelphia Sound, and that was a big part of it as well.
What's your favorite thing that you have written?
Probably a specific scene from the Time Machine show. It was called Jack's Big Game, and I particularly enjoyed that scene working with actual football. Not to mention, it was a piece in round, which is always fun, and just the choreography was great on it. But as far as the writing goes, it was just clever, quick. I always like snappy little pieces with a little bit of comedy, so David.
What kind of things inspire you right now?
Right now, it's been a lot of jazz, actually. I mean, I've been listening to jazz for years, but my school has access to a online jazz library with approximately 3 million different pieces. So usually when I'm writing, I'll just fire that up and hit random and just see what happens. The collection is incredible. It's just so varied and eclectic. It's great. That's actually one of the inspirations for this piece that I'm working on now, Echoes from Positano, because one of the characters in it, his name is Eddie. He's actually he's based off of a jazz guitarist from South Philadelphia. His name was Eddie Lang. He's considered the father of American guitar. That's one of the influences, certainly, his music.
You've been working with Aaron Jeffries. What is your favorite piece of advice that Aaron has given you so far?
I went up to New York in early October to see a rehearsal for a musical that he had written, which was going to be performed at a festival in New Haven, Connecticut. And while I was there, one of his actors was running late. And he asked if I would fill in and read some lines so that the other actors could rehearse properly. And most of the lines for this musical were rap. And, I'm not really very familiar with reciting that style of dialogue, but the piece of advice that he really gave me in that moment was essentially, you can't be afraid to try new things, because if you can't try any kind of new medium, then you won't be able to learn when you're creating. And that is actually one of the things that drove me to write what I'm working on now. Because I've never really worked with, one of the things I never really thought about in my own work was the music behind pieces, and if I was concerned about trying new things, then I wouldn't have done this. So I have to thank him for that.
What do you like about Aaron's writing?
It's so different from mine, which is really interesting. I think that's why the pairing was made, because we're so different. His work is a lot more fast, quickly paced than mine is. And I really appreciate that as far as what he does with especially in the musicals. Because you need that punchiness to really sell what you're doing. And that's, it's just incredible when you see it. The speed really sells the emotion.
What is your favorite scene that you have seen or read by Aaron?
It would have to be in the show that I saw in New Haven. There was a particular scene between a doctor and the doctor, who is one of the main characters of the piece. Aaron actually played this role in the production in New Haven. And between him and a teenage girl who was, I want to say that she had leukemia, and she was at the hospital. That was how they were to get, So, essentially, the whole play, the teenage girl had been rebelling against the doctor, because as most teenagers would, there are certain arguments. They don't want to take medicine. They feel as though they're being, denied rights and all of that kind of thing. And she, throughout most of the show, feels that the doctor doesn't really understand anything that she's going through, in both the medical way and in her life, her personal life. And in this one scene close to the end, the doctor reveals something about one of the other characters, and also reveals how his life is very similar to hers in terms of personal experience. But the way that this was done, it wasn't the traditional reveal in the sense where you can really predict it's coming. It was just done so quickly and so elegantly. It was fantastic. Just great.
What have you learned from Aaron?
One of the things that I've learned from him is that I should certainly include music and sound when I'm considering my work. Seeing his pieces with such a heavy musical influence were it's done wonders for me, and I feel that I will continue to use that as I go on with writing. And I love that punchiness, the quick emotional delivery that he allows with his. It's partially the word choice and partially the words that the way that everything's crafted. But I haven't really been able to replicate that yet. It's not a style that I'm very comfortable with, but it's certainly something interesting that I would like to try. So